The Marino Show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Marino Show. I'm your host, David Marino. Today, I'm talking to award-winning filmmaker Dylan A. Young. His films include Better Safe Than Sorry, Veronica, Something in the Woods, Good Morning, The Kid's Revenge, and The Visitor. Dylan, I'm so happy to have you today.
Oh, happy to be on. It's great to be here.
So I watched all of your films. I really enjoyed them. You have like a really good flair for the scary, the horror, and I'm a huge horror fan. If you can see some of the stuff behind me on my wall, there's Jason, all of that. For you, though, as an indie filmmaker, especially, you're a writer, you're a producer, you're a shooter, all of that. What inspired you to get into the world of filmmaking?
I'd always just wanted to be involved with filmmaking, like even since I was little, but like it didn't seem like an attainable thing. Like being somebody that didn't have a lot of money in the Midwest, I was like, I don't even know how movies are made. That's a big Hollywood thing, you know? And in my high school years, one of my friends became a filmmaker and he wanted to go to film school and he'd shoot stuff with us every once in a while and have us come in and act and stuff. And so I kind of got into the film world just through acting. But years down the road, I was a tattoo apprentice, got into a car accident. And while I was recovering, I decided I wanted to write a horror movie script because it's something I just always wanted to do. So I wrote the whole feature film script and I was like, well, what do I do with this? I don't know how to make movies. You know, I'm not going to be able to make this. So I ended up starting a clothing like merchandising for horror movies called videonasties.com. And through that, met indie filmmaker Charlie Steeds, based out of London, because I started doing clothes for some of his movies. And one day he hits me up and he tells me he's coming to America to make a movie. So I say, yeah, where at? And he says, Nashville, Tennessee. I'm based out of Louisville, Kentucky, so that's only a couple hours drive. So I was like, do you mind if I just come visit set sometime? And, you know, came down to it. He wanted me to come work on all 3 weeks of the movie, taught me how to run sound. You know, it ended up being like crash course filmmaking for me. And then I started getting into like my own stuff.
So you met somebody that kind of took you under their wing and showed you the ropes when it came to filmmaking.
Yeah, I said, you know, I don't know if I can afford to go out there for all 3 weeks. And he said, well, I'll put you up in a hotel and teach you how to run sound and you can do all the sound for the movie. And I said, sure.
So what was the first film that you made on your own?
The first film that I shot on my own was Veronica, but the composer wanted to do Better Safe Than Sorry first. So that's what came out first. But yeah, Veronica was my first short film.
So I found with Better Safe Than Sorry and Veronica, and obviously when you watch a film as a viewer, it can take on so many different meanings for different people, right? And what I got out of Better Safe Than Sorry and Veronica, it's sort of, for me, I took away fighting against the oppressor, you know, the revenge factor. When you're coming up with ideas for films or even shooting, does that go through your head, just knowing that at the end of the day, when you put it out into the world, everybody's going to have a different take and they're going to have a different view and feeling from it?
Yeah, so like whenever I'm concepting these stories and creating them, you know, there's obviously messages that I want to push, but I don't want one of my characters telling my other character how they're supposed to feel about something in the world. And then that's supposed to be how my audience is supposed to feel. I just want to show them like very impactful things about life and like situations in life that maybe they weren't a part of, so they can have an experience that like they hadn't previously had, and maybe it'll shape their way of thinking. And it's just like, getting people thinking is the main thing. So like, as you said, like, I'm not going to necessarily tell you how to think, but I'm going to present things in a way that reflects the way that I see the world. So basically it's just like, I don't want to tell you how to feel, but I want to be able to give you an experience that's like aligned with how I view things, and maybe you'll be able to help see eye to eye.
When you go about your creative process, I've always wondered this about, different filmmakers, even the writing portion of it. Do you approach that differently every time? Because I feel like with writing, either you're having a good day where everything's flowing and you have to stay focused at that moment, or you'll lose it, or you have a day when like nothing's coming to you. For you, what's the creative process like, at least with the writing part of the filmmaking process?
Yeah, so I've been like pretty busy with filmmaking since I started. And I feel like there's always more than one iron in the fire, or there's like different projects to work on. So like, really, I just kind of start my day and I get ready, and I'm just decide like, what kind of work am I in the mood for? Am I going to be sending emails all day and talking to people and doing this or that? Am I going to be writing? Am I going to be editing on my computer all day? So basically, like, I really only write when I feel like it's a writing day. So that way I never feel like I'm stuck or having to force something. And, a lot of the times with like feature film scripts, I'll sit on an idea for like a year or two. And then eventually, like, pretty much having the whole script in my head, I'll come up with this like aha moment, and I'll be like, oh, this is what makes this movie so much better. And now I have to write it. And I'll just sit down and like for 2 or 3 weeks, just write the whole feature script. I did it last year and the year before. And it's funny because a lot of these scripts maybe are above my like budget level right now, but they're just on my mind so much. It's almost like therapeutic to just like have it written out and not have to like think about it and worry about it anymore. And it's just like kind of a relieving and relaxing thing for me.
I know that this is hard for you, but you gotta tell me what happened, Hannah.
Okay. Well, you watched us pull off. Everything was going fine. Really. He was just asking me a bunch of questions about myself. I thought he was just getting to know me. I guess he was, but not in the way I'd hoped. I hadn't realized anything could be wrong until I noticed we weren't driving towards the restaurant anymore. Where are we going?
Just stopping by my friend's place real fast.
We had never talked about something like that, so I grabbed my phone to try and send you my location.
What's on your background?
As soon as I went to show him, he snatched the phone out of my hand, locked the doors, and threw my phone out the window. He was pushing me back into my seat and pulled the car off the road. He took his seat.
And the films that I watched, they're very high quality. I know that with indie filmmaking, or when you're starting out, obviously money is always an issue for everyone. Yeah. But they're so beautifully shot, both, all the films that I've seen. So do you work with a different crew, or do you do kind of all of it? How does that work for you? Because I know it's different from filmmaker to filmmaker, so I don't want to assume that you work one way, but do you have a crew of people that you've become acquainted with, that you work together with, or do you do a lot of it kind of, on your own?
I feel like one of the things that I've been challenging myself to do lately is bringing on more crew for each project and trying to kind of like grow into bigger projects with bigger budgets. Not that the budgets are necessarily getting any bigger, but just to like kind of acclimate myself with that. So, in the beginning, it was, I made that movie Death Ranch where I ran sound for Charlie Steeds. on that movie, he had a producer that was about to be directing a movie 2 weeks after we ended. His name was Aaron Murtis, and that movie was The Alpha Test. He told me, I've already got a sound guy for this movie, but I just like working with you. Would you come be my camera assistant? And I said, sure. So I just immediately got a second gig as crew. We started working together. He and Charlie felt like, maybe I did have a chance as an indie filmmaker, and they wanted to see where that would go. So basically, Aaron offered me, he said, I'll shoot and edit your first short film if you write and direct it. And I said, wow, let's do it. So, that was the big push for me to like really do that. And we shot Veronica. And at the end of shooting it, he said, hey, I think you have a good chance of being able to survive as an indie filmmaker and make a career out of it, but you'll never be able to do it if you don't know how to edit a movie, because you can't get a small budget and give most of that to an editor. So he was basically like, I just think you need to learn how to edit this. So basically I took a year to learn how to edit, and I recut Veronica like 3 or 4 times and shot Better Safe Than Sorry in that time and was cutting them back and forth to the point where I just felt like, okay, now I feel comfortable as an editor. I'm going to release these because I do feel like, they feel of quality that I was comfortable with.
Were you inspired by horror films or just films in general? Was there anything specific that got you interested in going down this road?
I had always been into horror movies, but whenever I was younger, I wasn't allowed to watch them. So it was like this kind of like, I like these scary Disney movies. And then it transitioned into like, my grandpa would let me watch a war movie with him. And I was like, oh, this is crazy. And then, so at some point I got to watch Scream and I got to watch Halloween, and, I was hooked. And, definitely owe a lot of it to that. But one thing that, I feel like it's hard to just narrow it down to one thing, but there's always these like pivotal moments as a filmmaker, and like a certain film you'll see and you'll be like, oh, I need to do something. And like, it'll be inspiring to you. A funny story, one time I was on a vacation in Minnesota at a cabin in the woods by myself in middle school, and rented Hostel and watched it alone in this cabin in the woods. And the movie ended and I was terrified. And every sound I was hearing around me, I was like, oh no. And I just had this thought. I was like, I wonder if there's any special features. And so I turned the special features on and I started seeing how they made the movie. And it was just like all of that anxiety I had was gone. And I think, that was like one of those like pivotal points of me like having an interest in special features, because now I've learned so much of what I've learned from like audio commentary tracks and like behind the scenes documentaries and stuff.
What are some big messages or that are important to you to get out in your films? Is there something that's kind of a streamline or that you think of often when you are writing or making films?
I think like, as you've brought up, like just general themes of oppression and just trying to like broaden people's understandings of the world. I think like a lot of bigotry comes down to like misunderstanding and like not being exposed to things. And sometimes I think just like being able to use like filmmaking as a way to like expose people to like different cultures or different environments or things that they like wouldn't understand is cool to just like help people broaden their general perspectives. And that's part of what like drives me to like one day want to go make movies in different countries over the years. That way I can kind of like, I wouldn't mind going and making movies in foreign countries where I don't understand the dialect and like having the whole films be in their spoken language, as long as I'm able to, with the translator, like build a trusting relationship with my actors. Cause like, I feel like being able to like portray other cultures is something that's like really interesting to me. And it also would allow me to like travel and learn more about the world. So yeah, I think that there's just like a lot of messages that I have like worked into some of my films and stuff. And I just try to like let it be in a way that's like self-reflective for the audience and just like allows people to like think more about the movie. And a lot of the time I'll try to like work some of that stuff into like shocking moments in a film, because those are what like are kept in people's heads a lot of times. And they'll like revisit these moments of like fear or sorrow. And then it like allows them to be able to like think on it and like think about how some of the characters would feel in those situations.
I also liked in your films the special effects, which I know is a whole character in itself. How do you go about, approaching that? Because, it takes a lot of talent to be a special effects person. So do you work with people in that industry or in that area of filmmaking?
Yeah. So at first, I hired somebody out to do props for Veronica, and they made the guts and stuff and passed those off to me before production began. And then on Better Safe Than Sorry, there's a whole story about like it was a very, very last minute production. So there wasn't a whole lot of like SFX stuff to be had. But then as we moved on, I'd started finding people that had experience in special effects, and then met someone who had just graduated from a special effects school in Nashville, Tennessee, and then got to go tour that school and meet some more of their students. And then finding people like local to Louisville that are involved in the special effects world. I think it is something that's really important to me because as much as I like old schlocky horror films, sometimes you're reminded that you're watching a film when you see special effects. And that's something that I like to try to avoid. And I'll find myself shooting a good bit of extra special effects shots that I know will be cut down drastically or removed from the film once it's done, because I don't want to pull someone from the film. I want them to be really impactful moments. I don't want them to be reminded that they're watching a movie. I want them to be shocked and pulled more into the film. So I think that's something that's really important to me in special effects, and that they're like done like really well and lit in a way where it's like, I think like the lighting on special effects is one of the most important parts, because, between the way that you light it and the camera angles that you use on it, it's like you can hide or show so much of it that, can make it look fake or not.
Well, and I brought special effects up because before we started the interview, I was mentioning that I really loved your film Good Morning, Mourning. And that did have some special effects in it, but it wasn't like, it didn't have to be like elaborate, but it was very effective.
Thank you very much. That was a fun short to do, and shout out to Audrey Willis for doing the special effects on it. I basically came up with the concept for the special effects and, talked with her about how we wanted to do it. And then I went through and ordered all the different makeups that I thought would be best for it and had her do it. So I do try to be much more involved with the special effects than a lot of other directors. And I think one thing that helps a lot with that is most directors don't take enough time for it. And when special effects are rushed, they're often ruined. And it's just something that's really important to me, that they're pulled off well. And yeah, with Good Morning, that was something that was really fun to kind of design a creature, so to speak.
Have you had a few of those stories, with people who've watched maybe one of your films and shared a story with you, or just told you that it meant something to them?
Yeah, specifically with Veronica and Better Safe Than Sorry. I'm sure people that have watched them would be able to understand why. They were a little heavier for me to write and just very meaningful to me. And so it was nice to see that, some people were able to have like a cathartic experience being able to watch the films.
What is one of the projects that you're working on now? I know I mentioned several of your films, but there are some that you're kind of working on as we speak, right?
You saw the Kids Revenge Festival cut. That was for a contest. So I wanted to kind of, since it was a timed thing, give it a little bit of a polish. So I've cut it down to 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and we're just kind of working on some of the title cards and stuff, and it's almost ready for a release. Over Black Friday weekend, I shot another short film called Sorry for the Mess. It's essentially a suicide awareness PSA short film. And I've pretty much just barely started editing it, but it won't take me too long. We'll have to wait on like a score and stuff though. And then The Visitor was a feature film that I shot in September of 2020 and have just really taken my time with it. And it will be finished editing in about a month or two, and hopefully just be on like Tubi to watch for free with ads by the end of the year.
Are you seeing that there's more like of a creative shift when it comes to, you know, these independent films getting more attention and maybe more risks being taken and not just the cookie cutter approach?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. It's like, I think, you know, some of this is owed to people like Robert Eggers and Ari Aster and like, you know, the distribution company A24. It's like they've really done a big effort to kind of reapproach art house cinema. And they make a lot of these art house movies that are palatable to a general audience. And I think it's a very winning equation. I think that the thing that I see right now changing within the film industry is there's just so many outlets right now. As far as, you know, how are you going to find your money? How are you going to find your distribution? Are you going to be working with an agent? Are you going to sell to a distributor? Is that going to happen in the US alone or throughout the whole world? Are you contacting all of these countries? You know, there's so much opportunity that I feel like sometimes it can get overwhelming and people don't know where to go or where to begin or what to do. You know, I'm constantly questioning myself about how should I go about having my next film made. But I think that is really a good thing. And we're just going to continue to see that more and more as technology grows, just as like, you know, all of the streaming service shifting around and all of these changes and new ones popping up all the time. That's what's happening with, you know, people raising money for films and people getting distribution. And, you know, it's a lot to keep up with. And you're always just wondering like whether or not you're making the right decisions. But I think that it's really cool that there are just so many different opportunities out there now, and you're not just having to go to the big shot Hollywood distributor and he tells you you're not good enough.
Ultimately, what would be your goal down the line?
I think for the most part with big Hollywood studios, they don't really want to work with directors until they're about 30. And you can't really make huge movies with them until you kind of establish yourself and proven yourself. So ideally, I'd say in 10 years, I'd love to be working for Warner Brothers, shooting on IMAX film. I think that's my goal. You know, it's like, I just want to be able to make the best movies that I possibly can and have as wide of a reach for the stories that are in my head.
When you make your films, before you put them out into the world, do you get your friends together, engage their reaction, or what's that process like for you? Or is it just, I'm happy with it, I like the way I've edited it and the way I put it together, this is what's going to go out?
So for instance, like The Kid's Revenge that you saw is technically a festival cut. And like I had just finished off the Good Morning public cut, and that's what you saw. I do definitely take some time while it's screening in festivals and stuff to just like think about anything I can possibly do to make it better. And a lot of the time before I do a public release, I'll just do a little bit of tweaks here and there. And then, you know, after that, I won't touch it. But I'll also, you know, in between like festival screenings and stuff, occasionally I'll find like a local bar or something with some TVs or a projector screen and invite a bunch of friends out and just kind of gauge reactions and see, you know, oh, I've got 2 new shorts out. Which one do people prefer? And, you know, it's mostly just for fun. My goal for this year is to do 3 short films and another feature film by the end of the year. Feature film wise, I'm looking at doing a home invasion thriller script that I wrote a couple of years ago, but we'll see what happens. Things are always changing. You know, what you're wanting to make is always changing. What you can find money for is always changing. So we'll just kind of see what happens. I'm always down to go with the flow. If an offer for something better came up, I would take it.
What would your advice be to somebody who is interested in making films like yourself? And, you know, what would you tell them when they're starting out?
Don't wait. The earlier you start, the faster that like, not necessarily the faster that you'll grow, but like you just can't, it's so easy to put things off. Oh, well, you know, if only I had this 4K camera, or if only I was able to work with this one DP, or, you know, it's like, you really just have to put that aside, especially when you're just very first starting out. Like, go get a little handy cam out of your aunt's closet and, you know, power it up and see what happens. You can make a movie by yourself with a tripod. You're the star. Don't show it to anybody. You've made it in, you know, you've learned how to make a movie. Now you're not as nervous when you go approach all of your friends about like, hey, I want to make a movie, because you know you've already done it. So it's like, even if you just shoot something with a little iPhone in your own room and you're the star of it, that's how you learn, you know? And it's like, the other thing I would say is get on Facebook, find local filmmaking groups, post, I'm interested in becoming a filmmaker, but maybe I don't know how to make a movie. And I'm willing to go work as a PA or an actor or whatever in anybody else's movie for free for a couple of days, just so I can observe and learn. You know, like there's so many ways to go about it, but it's all about learning and not waiting because you don't feel like it's right. Like, also just be ready for like tons of hours of unpaid work and like working late into the night and losing sleep and forgetting about things you need to do with your life. It takes a lot of commitment, a lot of perseverance, but like you'll know quickly if it's not right for you. And like the moment for me was like the first couple times I got to screen a movie for other people and like getting audience reactions. And I was just like, yeah, this is what I was meant to do. I was like, you know, there was no questioning it. It was just like, this is like 100% what I want to do with the rest of my life, like no matter what. If my career were to not work out and I was bagging groceries as a 70-year-old, I'm going to be putting nickels to the side to try to get some new camera so I can shoot something with my friends. You know, it's like, even if it's just our poker game turned into some kind of drama, you know, it's like, I don't ever want to give up filmmaking. It just means way too much to me.
What is it that you enjoy so much about it? And what is it that keeps bringing you back to doing this? Because it's very, very hard work.
Yeah. I think that just like my films mean a lot to me, especially narrative films, because I'm able to like portray messages that are important to me, and being able to share that with people. Definitely like audience screenings and just like knowing that people are watching my films is like one of the most like important things to me. And just like, I think like, you know, I even had somebody just like thank me for making something one time. And I think like that meant so much to me. And that whenever I noticed that like, you know, something that I've made has like touched someone or scared someone, it's just like, it feels like I'm like giving back almost to this thing that like meant so much to me over the years.